For the record, I was raised in Miami, which is basically a foreign country.
So we got it all.
Yes, it is.
I hate Monopoly. Not because it takes literally days to play, and not because my family tries to make the most annoying trades, and not because I always lose. It's the way you lose Monopoly that bugs me. It's a lot like grieving, you see. You go through these phases, and the first one is denial. You tell yourself that you need just a little bit more money or just a little bit more time to pull off an epic comeback so often that you almost make yourself believe it. Eventually, though, denial deposits you neatly into desperation, and you turn into some kind of an animal. You count money with an obsession that would set Scrooge aback, and sometimes you find yourself praying you'll be sent to jail, because at least they don't charge you rent. Which you can only fight for so long, right, until desperation gives way to resignation, and at that point you're a zombie. You meander along the board, uncaring, waiting to be destroyed by the preordained winner, and by the time you finally lose it all, you're more relieved than anything else. I hate games like that. I hate playing like that. I never want to end like that. But you were forced to end like that, weren't you, Abuelo? I always wondered if you went through phases too, if you found yourself in denial the first time you couldn't match a name to an old friend's face, or wondered why your son kept getting presents on October 4th. Did you hit desperation when you had to be reintroduced to your grandchildren for the third day in a row? I can only imagine that you would have, only imagine that it would have been our looks of pity that sent you over the edge, because you used to be the most intimidating person I loved. All gruff shouts of coño y joder, and eyes so sharp they could nail you to a wall from half a country away, and hugs that crushed us close like you were terrified of losing us. It must have terrified you to realize that you were losing us no matter how hard you fought, and believe me, you fought hard. But even you could only last so long, and the only name I have for what we saw when we visited you in Madrid the last time was resignation. You'd forgotten how to speak by then. You had to be helped to the bathroom. During lunch, we had to hold you down and pull a tooth that you were intent on chewing and swallowing out of your mouth. You only had a few months left, the doctors told us. A few months of limbs you couldn't move, of poems you couldn't write, of a life you couldn't really live until a Swiss cheese brain and a toothpick body just gave out. And I remember wishing that you had less. I remember wishing that you would stop fighting so hard, and I wish that I could say that as I watched you pass through the stages of death, I passed through the stages of grief, but the only thing I felt when I heard you had died was relief. And I used to think that I was a terrible person for that. But then I remembered who you were. A published poet at 28, a film writer and director at 38, a film producer at 48, and by the time you hit 50, you were in charge of every single film festival in Spain. Married once at 25, and again at 35, and again at 54, to an actress 20 years your junior, and that is all true. But that is the you that everyone else saw, because you were also the rumbling baritone that first convinced me of the beauty of Spanish, the kind wit that took time to make me laugh off my early girl problems from half a world away. You were the worn face that crumpled so easily into a smile upon being introduced to your grandchildren, even after you'd long forgotten who they were. You were everything that a life, everything that a person could be, the good hand in hand with the bad. And when I remembered this, I realized that if you had been able to speak in those last few months, you would have told me that there are some games it's okay to quit, some things it's okay to let go of, like old bank statements. A love that's more complacency than compassion. The last 15 minutes of a Monopoly game. A life lived in nothing but blank spaces, which used to be so full.